My name is Bruce Berger, and I'm probably known in the community as the founder of Heartwood, and known in a little wider circle as an author of Esoteric Anatomy, The Body is Consciousness. And I'd like to talk a little bit about my journey this morning. I was born, my mythical home is Crankshaft, New Jersey. I'll go that far. And my dad had a corner store on the corner of Home Street. A corner grocery store, and I can kind of remember, being part of a tribe of kids playing there. And at about age 11 or 12, we moved downtown. He'd picked up a store in a busy neighborhood downtown, and suddenly I was kind of ripped out of the environment of Home Street and the tribe of other kids and the safety, running through the woods, into an environment where I really wasn't allowed to go out. A street was a commercial street with liquor stores and bars and busy. And so I had a really happy childhood. I was a happy-go-lucky kid, but I think I was more lonely than many. And spent more time alone. When I look back at my life, we have what we call unconscious intention, where you can look at your life and see the way things have unfolded and see a root intention. And in my case, it had to do with the fact that no one taught me how to read, and I went off to first grade in school and didn't know how to read, and it was a terribly humiliating experience to fail every test. And I think the only victory I had was somebody taught me how to cheat, and I was able to scribble the spelling words on pieces of paper, which I hid in my desk. And then in second grade, I was kept back. And then in second grade, I guess I got a social promotion. The teacher said the only thing wrong with this kid is no one's ever taught him to read. And she was really wonderful. She created a safe environment for me. I'd grown up in a corner store, so she made a corner store in the classroom with kids brought in milk cartons and coffee cans and boxes. And it was an environment where I felt secure and felt like I knew something. And in that environment, she taught me to read and got my mother to read with me. And I became a voracious reader. Because on the one hand, I had this deep feeling that something was terribly wrong. Initially, I thought it was maybe with me. But reading, I hope, would teach me something about this world. The world seemed so huge, and my own situation so small and alone, that I just was a voracious reader, spent my life in the library, just hungry. And at one point, I discovered the literature on alienation and began to have a better handle on what I was experiencing, or at least for me. So I headed off to, in college I studied sociology. I think psychology was a little too threatening for my psyche, but I studied sociology, trying to understand. At that point in time, there was a literature on alienation which rooted it in mass society. So I had this image that the abyss, the shadow, the terror I was facing was somehow rooted in the loss of community, and somehow I had a deep intention to find community. And in fact, I can still remember driving around in the countryside. We lived outside of New Brunswick, and it was rural. And in those days, recreational driving, you just drove around happy to be a kid in the vehicle. And I can remember driving through rural New Jersey, 18, 19, 20, dreaming of living in an A-frame or converted barn in a community in California. This is what I was envisioning. So I ended up getting a master's in sociology, teaching at the University of Nevada, ended up teaching at Rutgers, teaching sociology. And I was in a PhD program at the New School, but I really didn't have the kind of background that it took to get a PhD. The key thing in getting a doctorate is to really have a point of view. And I had, book learning. I could rattle it off. I was bright, but I just didn't really have the kind of foundation. So I dropped out of academia, and destiny took me to India. I can remember I was talking to a colleague at Rutgers who mentioned he'd been teaching for the army in Turkey, and he mentioned it on a vacation. He'd gone to Kathmandu, and I just heard the word Kathmandu, and I just immediately, like a fly to honey, I had to go to Asia. And so I booked a student ticket that took me to India, Burma, Thailand, and Nepal, and then came back and resigned my position at Rutgers. And in 1973, I put on a backpack and began a journey of spending the next 2.5 years living out of a backpack, wandering around India, with a desperate prayer in my heart for right livelihood. In 1975, I was 110 pounds of mostly worms and parasites, and it was time for me to come back to the U.S. I came back settling in Santa Cruz and wondering what my career would be, my right livelihood would be, because I was always a very idealistic person. And really afraid to start anything. And finally, I was at Mount Shasta and met a fellow traveler. And she took me to a psychic who said, your work is as a polarity therapist. You must go and learn polarity therapy. And I'd been drawn to polarity therapy. The books of Dr. Randolph Stone, the founder, had just mesmerized me. His charts and illustrations of the body as an energy field had really called to me. And so I took the last of my savings and went off to a place called the Polarity Health Institute on the eastern slopes of Mount Shasta. And did a training program there in energy balancing and health education. And then the next step after that was I went off to Mount Shasta City. And there the CoOp was in the former flying saucer factory. And I rented what had been the office of the flying saucer factory. There were pictures of flying saucers around the walls. There was a vault in the floor where they'd kept the flying saucer that they were making. They evidently were channeling instructions for making this flying saucer. And then they needed a material that only the Defense Department had. And once they contacted the Defense Department, their channel closed up on them. So the CoOp was in the flying saucer factory. I started doing energy balancing in the flying saucer factory. And then winter came, I headed off to Santa Cruz. At Mount Shasta, I met this really talented woman with an amazing gift of song. And she and I partnered to start teaching energy healing. In my first weeks at Santa Cruz, I'd gone to a yoga retreat, and kind of shy, I really only talked to one person there that I remembered, and he had been teaching energy balancing at Michael Tierra's School of Natural Healing in Santa Cruz. And he was leaving the area and asked me if I would take his position. So pretty quickly I was a teacher of energy balancing, meeting my fate, meeting my destiny at Michael's school. And then there was another school that competed with Michael's. And so he saw that Michael's school had a Polarity therapist in residence teaching, so he came over and asked me if I would teach at his school. Now it turns out, for a really great story, that there had been some women, some sex workers in the Monterey area who were being harassed by the Vice Squad, who needed a massage certificate rather quickly. So it turns out that this was the class that I was to teach. And my first class were these young ladies who took long breaks, weren't terribly interested. But in any case, Michael's school and this school opened up my destiny as a teacher. As it turned out, the Vice Squad came to the school and wondered why he'd given them the certificates. So even before they'd graduated, when their manager, shall I call him, paid the tuition, they got the certificates rather than waiting. And I think once the tuition was paid, I think they dropped out of the class. But in any case, I had a few students, and I think we'll probably cut this out of the final edit. So the woman who I met at Mount Shasta was a really, really gifted body worker, a really deep person, and a wonderful, wonderful singer. And so we started offering classes. At that point in time, we just rented the library in one of the city of Santa Cruz's schools. And we used the library tables for massage tables. And our first class was very successful. We had close to 20 students sign up. And then we tried to get a residential facility up in Bonnie Doon, and the neighbors didn't want a massage school there, so we were shot down. Finally, we rented what had been the old Salvation Army Church in Santa Cruz on Washington Street, a place called Ruth's Dance Studio. And Ruth was offering classes pretty much after school, and then it was martial arts space in the evening. So we were able to rent it during the day for our massage school. And we had a kitchen in the office so that when it came time to cook lunch for everybody, we kind of moved the phone out to the steps. And we were there, and again, very, very successful. And it was a very special environment because every class began in song and ended in song, and we were just immersed in love. And we built a beautiful, beautiful, loving community. But in no time at all, the neighbors were complaining about the pressure on the parking and our students streaking through the neighborhood. And so we moved then to what had been the biggest church, big Baptist church on 7th Avenue, 2 blocks from the beach. And there we expanded to offer close to 50 courses in herbology, massage, Chinese medicine, psychic development. But I'd always dreamed of living in a community in the country, and that by that point I'd partnered with Chela, and we'd gotten married, and she was pregnant, and there was an apple maggot thing going on in California, and they had helicopters spraying malathion to control the apple maggot around Santa Cruz. So we pretty quickly started looking for a place in the country.